Welcome to Art 148 Photography Business Basics Part 2. This part will talk about, discuss the life cycle of a typical photography project. So we'll walk through all the steps from the first contact with a client through completion. So all the little things, again, this is a quick overview, not highly detailed. We will look at some sample documents along the way, but it'll give you a general idea of what we're talking about. So let's get started with a photo project typical life cycle. So here's what I mean by that. It's, again, from a first contact with a customer, they say, hey, I need some photos. What happens next? So let's walk through that. So start with the client inquiry. This can happen lots of different ways. Maybe they saw you on social media. They found your business cards laying around. They met you somewhere. I got a gig once when I was sitting at a Starbucks with my camera on the table in front of me, and the gentleman asked, "Are you a photographer?" I said, "Yes." "Do you do headshots?" I said, "Yes." And then we got some headshots done for him. So it was not the same day, but you get the idea. So all of these steps, sometimes you can maybe skip one or two or abbreviate them, but I want to go through them because there's more here than just saying, yes, I'm a photographer, let me take your picture. You need to protect yourself and think about all the details. Manage expectations. That's so important. Know what you're going to provide, what it costs, and what the person's going to get in return. So that's what this basic process is all about. So first, someone says, hey, I want some picture taken. So your next step is to respond to them. And if it's an email, a phone call, a text, whatever, respond as fast as you can. If it comes late in the night, I tend not to reply. I don't want to set up the expectation that, hey, you can reach me at any time. I mean, we kind of can. But if it's outside of a normal business hours or maybe on weekend, consider the next business day as soon as you can replying. So that's my general rule of thumb of that. And ask the questions. If someone says, I need a portrait photo, you need to ask, what do they mean by that? Would you like one location? Are we doing multiple locations? Do you need multiple clothing changes? What time of day? Are we doing inside, outside? Get all the information you can, including where they want to take the photos. If it's just down the road from where you live, that is relatively easy. If it's 2 hours away, or they want to take the photos in a location that's farther away, you might want to consider, I would suggest considering adjusting the pricing, because that's 2 hours you're not working for somebody else and not getting directly paid. So find out everything you can, specify the project as much as you can. Do that, within 24 hours, maybe a little faster, but 12 to 24 hours is a good response time. And generally, I reply in the same manner that the customer inquired of me. So if it's a DM on social media, I'll reply there first and then suggest we take the conversation somewhere else. If it's a text, I'll reply with a text. Or if they say, hey, send me a text, and they say, call me at this number, then that's what I'll do. And then they'll reply, let you hopefully answer all the questions. If they haven't, get clarification, or if they're not clear in their reply, make sure before you go to the, too much further, get all the information you can. And then the step after that is generally sometimes face-to-face. Doesn't happen a lot for me. Oftentimes it'll happen just by meeting, online or a phone. But again, some kind of personal contact. And I love trying to set up meetings. Actually, that's a good thing to try and do. If you can do a face-to-face or even a FaceTime video type call, if you can become a real person, a visual to the person on the other end, it's easier to get the projects because you're a real human being now. And now you can leverage who you are as a unique person, to help you get that job, and they get to a better sense of that. So you all agree to work together, and then boom, magic happens after that. The next steps actually are defining the project, both from what you're going to do and then what it's going to cost. So the first step in that is day and time, when it's happening. Make sure you get the location, and then what I call scope of work. And that's kind of a software term, but it means what are you going to do? What are you providing for them? And be as specific as possible. This includes what photo services you'll provide. So a headshot is different than a portrait, is different than a wedding if you're doing portrait, type work. And then who's going to be the subjects? If I'm doing headshots and it's just one person, it's a different price than if I'm doing 10 corporate headshots on the same day. And then when you will deliver the photos and how many photos you will deliver. I always specify a range of photos. I don't say you'll get exactly 12 photos. I say, 10 to 15 photos, and you'll receive them within approximately a week. Also let them know how I'll deliver them, online gallery or downloads through Dropbox or such like that, or a photo print, or however you're going to deliver the work. So you're defining what you're doing and what they will receive and when they will receive those things. Very, very important stuff. Again, managing expectations. If you want to make sure that if you say you're going to deliver it in a week, try and deliver it in 5 days. If you say I'm going to deliver it tomorrow, you don't get any wiggle room. So give yourself a little grace in the timing of when you will be completing, because it's not just taking the photos, it's editing the photos. Don't forget that part. And then you'll get to budget and costs, what it will cost for you to do this work. And so how do you do all that? That's a hard thing. It's very personal. There are some guidelines I'll talk about. Basically, your price is relative. And here's what I mean by that. A headshot, which is a relatively quick photo session, usually 15 minutes to a half an hour, is a different price because it's less time than obviously like a wedding would be. A wedding is a one-time event. If the weather doesn't work that day, or I mess up or have a technical difficulty, I can redo that for that person, and it doesn't really cost us anything except a little more time, and then I make sure to buy him a coffee if it was my goof. But a wedding or any kind of event that's a one and it only happens that one time, there's higher risk for everybody involved, so the cost is higher. Also, they tend to take more time. Most projects, I don't price per hour. I will do a project fee. It's easier for the customer to say yes to that because they know what they're paying. And then again, because I've defined the scope of work, they'll know what they're getting. So for example, I will say, if you're not sure exactly how much time it will take, what I do is I break it up into parts of a day. So I'll say like a half day, which is 4 to 5 hours, up to 4 to 5 hours. Always include the up to, because that way if you're done in 3, you're okay. Or a full day, which is 8 to 9 hours. And the price is this. And then what I will do is say if we have to go beyond that time, it's X dollars per hour. Okay? And that half day rate, that full day rate, or a wedding rate, or a portrait rate, or a headshot rate, all of that is based, in the back of my head at least, on how much time I think it's going to take and what my hourly rate is. So let's hop over quickly to a worksheet where we can figure out what you should charge per hour. So let's do that real quick. Here we go. And here's this worksheet. This worksheet is available for you on Canvas. You can take a look over there. Let's see. Can we do this? Yeah, there we go. So here's some elements in your expenses, your monthly expenses, and then that'll help us determine how much you need to make per hour to pay for those monthly things. So let's see if I can do this. That'll help. Yeah, there we go. So first of all, you got your housing expense. That's usually your most expensive thing. If you live around Seattle, let's pretend you live by yourself. I'm assuming for most people, that's your goal. You want to be on your own. I'm going to make up some numbers here, but it's somewhat based in fact. So let's say you have a 1-bedroom apartment in Seattle. We're going to go with $1,800 a month. That includes your sewer, your garbage, whatever other fees. That'll get you basically all the apartment fees and such like that, or your mortgage, whatever. That'll be low for some, high for others. You need internet. You got to get some data in and out of your house. So usually that's about $90 a month. You have electric utility bills for your house. So depending on where you live, what you do, again, that's going to be maybe $100 a month, give or take a little bit. You'll need some kind of transportation, whether you're doing Uber, taxi, bus. There's some fees associated with that. If you want the most freedom and flexibility, obviously that's your own car. So I'm going to base this on that. Maybe you don't have a car or don't want a car, but let's just plug the numbers in for now. And we're going to say you got a new car. Let's just say you got a new car. We'll go kind of medium price on a new car. I know they're expensive. Hang on. Even if you have an old car, if you have a car that's paid for, my wife has a 13-year-old car and it's not free. Even though it's paid for, it's not free. We still put money into it every month for maintenance. Well, over time, it works out to every month. Anyway, so I'm going to put $400 here. We need to put gas in that car. It's not electric yet. So depending on how much you drive, this will be a variable amount. It depends on what gas prices do, obviously. But let's see. We'll put about $100 in there. Insurance for your car, depending on your previous driving record, this amount will vary, obviously. Also, your age. I'm just going to kind of base this on what my son pays for his insurance in his life. We'll go about $200 a month for insurance on your car. Maintenance on your car, you got oil changes, tires, brakes, things wear out over time. We'll kind of assume it'll cost you over, if you could pay it monthly, even though you pay it in chunks when it happens. Let's just do about $150. You need some health insurance. Oh my gosh, don't get sick. If you do, you want to have health insurance. How much does that cost? It's expensive, very, very expensive. So I'm going to put $300 a month in here. Sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes it's less. Or if you're on your parents' plan, awesome, enjoy it while you can until you're 27. Adobe Creative Cloud, you need the software that makes our photo life run. That's a monthly subscription. For now, you get it cheap, but eventually you will be on your own and no longer have the Highline discount. So I'm going to put the $55 price in there per month. Hey, you're a human being. You need to be entertained. Maybe you go to the movies, you go to restaurants, you eat out, you go to concerts, whatever. It's important. It also is inspiration. So I'm going to put $100 here just to get us started. Cell phone, you got to have that. Got to have that. I think it's about $75, give or take a little bit, depending on your data plan and what you do, but we'll go there. You need food. You can't eat top ramen forever. Excuse me. So you need some food. Let's do $300 a month there. You need camera gear and computer. I'm going to, again, assume you bought some stuff or you're going to be buying stuff throughout the year. This isn't like you're making monthly payments on it. It's just what it would cost if you could pay for it each month. Some years you might have almost nothing here because your gear is all paid for, but and you haven't bought anything new. But let's just kind of say, we're going to spend $150-ish a month. You need some insurance to cover either if you're renting or if you need business insurance, homeowners insurance, things like that. That's going to be a chunk of change. I don't know exactly what to put on this. I'm just going to put $100 a month. Might be less than that. Don't forget this one. This is the one I have the hardest time with. Savings and retirement. No one else is going to be, if you're on your own freelancing as a photographer, no one else is putting money aside for your retirement. So that's up to you. So you need to budget that, include that in your costs. And I would suggest, let's do $300 a month. I'd really like that to be $500 a month or even $1,000, but we'll start there. Taxes, you're also responsible for, if you're a sole proprietor, any money earned through that you're responsible for a higher proportion of Social Security taxes and things like that because the employer isn't paying half. So depending on what you make, this number will go up and down. But again, I'm going to put $300 just to kind of get us started. So we've got some expenses. And we're at this number, $42,200. And, you can argue with me on these numbers, and this worksheet is downloadable. You can put in your own specific numbers here. But I want to show you how this works. So here we go. The next line to enter in the worksheet is how much do you want to put in the bank at the end of each month. This is important too because you don't want to just end up at zero. So I covered all my expenses, but there's nothing left. There's no cushion. There's no, oh my gosh, this month I have almost no business, so I don't have anything to fall back on. So you need a profit. And what's a good amount? What do you want? What would you want to pay yourself when you're done? I mean, this is just your living expenses. This is just getting you through the day, through every day for 30 days. What do you want to have at the end of the month? So let's put $1,000 in here, okay? You put more, put less. Let's see what that does us. The last item to include before the calculation will show us what you should charge per hour is how many hours do you think people will pay you per month? Here's the hard fact. Remember in part 1, I showed you all the things you got to do to get your business started, all the marketing stuff you got to do, all the prep you got to do that we've showed already here in part 2. For most working photographers, if they're full-time at it, or any kind of freelance gig, you're lucky if, we know the work week is 40 hours. You're lucky if you bill 10 hours a week on average. Some weeks you might bill 40. Some weeks you will bill 0. So I'm going to put 10 hours a week, which is 40 hours a month in a 4-week month, okay? So 40 hours. Boom. There's your hourly rate. Given those numbers, you got to charge $138 per hour. That's your base rate you're thinking about when you quote a project. So if someone needs you to do something and it's going to take you an hour, you should charge $150, give or take. Okay? So don't sell yourself short. Don't be excited. Ooh, I'm making $25 an hour. That's not enough. If you're living at home, yes, it can be. It's a great place to start, but be prepared to know that if you're on your own doing this full time, that's about where you're going to need to be. Somewhere between $125 and $150 an hour in this Seattle neighborhood. Again, I know you can save money depending on what you do with cars and insurance and things like that. And you can play with these numbers and see what your real life might be. But don't get, the thing I would encourage you to do is to leave this estimated billable hours at about 40. And don't play too much with this monthly profit. You need that to get you to the next month or through the slow month. Okay? So that's the worksheet. All right, so we've calculated our monthly expenses and such, and now we got a billable rate thing. We've got our in our back of our mind our hourly rate. So we've got that. Now we got to get on with the project. So you're going to give the customer an estimate based on what you understand of the scope of work and your hourly rate. That'll kind of factor into that, and you'll also do a contract. So basically, before it becomes a contract, my contract is an estimate. I don't know if that makes sense, but here's what it looks like. So here is an example of a client shoot for 6 hours for a wedding anniversary, 50th wedding anniversary. Here's what you need to include in your contract. This is all made up by me. No lawyers involved. You can, it's basically what you need to do is cover in an estimate, and then the final contract is who the parties are, so your name and the customer's name, the client's name, what you will be providing, when you'll deliver it, and what you'll be paid, and when you'll be paid. Okay? So you can see in this contract, Sandy and Lionel were the customers, what date it's happening, where it's happening, the services I'm providing, when they'll get the photos, the license. Now, the license is really important. So for me on personal, like portraits and things, I give the customer the license to do what they want online and for printing. ask for credit if they can, and I also then make sure they know I'm managing their expectations. These photos are still my copyright, so I can do whatever I want, but I know that I want to let them know that I will use these photos in my own marketing for my next projects. So I built the price here at $600. These folks, I should have done a little bit higher price, but based on my math that I just showed you. But I gave them a little bit of a reduction in price because they were parents of a wedding photo couple I had done the year previous. So anyway, and then a payment schedule. When will you be paid? So for events, personal things, portraits, I generally get, if it's a larger amount, if it's not a headshot, I'll get a deposit up front. Especially if it's someone I don't know. That's not so much for trust as for cash flow. That way, I've got some money coming in at least small chunks more frequently. I usually do a half up front. Some people do 25% and then 75% at the end. I just have always kind of traditionally done half. And then I get a final payment on the day of the event or prior. So I did receive payment from them the day of the event, the final payment. So this becomes a contract when they sign it. You can see there's a signature line for me, a signature line for them, and boom, we're done. Not too hard, nothing terribly fancy here. Sometimes I'll include language about cancellation and things like that, but this is the basics to get us started. All right, so then once you've got all the agreements in place and the scope of work defined, then you go into production, actually doing the work. So this is super important before you head out to go do the thing. Make sure you check all your equipment. I have a checklist for that. We'll come back to it later. Well, let's go ahead and do it right now. So let's go to that checklist real quick. All right, so here's the checklist. So before you go, check all these things. You can customize this for your own, what you need to carry with you. You won't need all these things all the time, but there's just like in the business side of this, there's a lot of little details that are easy to overlook, and in my experience, these are important to consider before you go. So make sure your sensor's clean. When was the last time you cleaned your sensor? Nothing worse than having a dirty sensor when you're doing a gig, and then you have to either try and edit it out in post-production, and you spend so much time and you stop making money on the gig. Make sure you got the lenses you need. If you only have one lens, that's super easy. If you've got multiple lenses, make sure you bring the right ones for the project. Batteries. Make sure your camera battery is charged. If you're using any kind of lights, that the batteries that those might need are also charged and ready to go. Modifiers, blah, blah, blah. You can see all the stuff here. There's a lot of things. Depending on what you do, this may seem like overkill, but build your own list. Having an actual checklist is helpful. Like today in class, I did forget one thing because I didn't have a checklist. It's habit mostly of the time. I don't forget it, but sometimes you'll forget it. So not fun. Memory card's in good shape. Make sure you've got the phone number of where you're going and the person, just in case you run late. Make sure they have your contact info if they're running late. Make sure you've got directions to the project. This is easier now with maps on our phones and things. I like to do a traffic check before I go, just to make sure there's no surprises. I do that usually an hour before I think I need to leave so that I can adjust my leave time. And then here's a super important thing. If you're supposed to be there at 9 o'clock, plan to be there at 8:45. That gives you some wiggle room to find parking if you need to, for traffic being worse, for, just stuff that happens. So 15 minutes to a half hour early, especially if it's a new place to you. Give yourself a half hour. You can always sit in your car and just chill and collect your thoughts. I like to do that before I go. It's a nice transition time from pre-shoot to ready to shoot. Get a shot list if you have a physical list of what photos need to be taken, or at least in your head, understanding what you're going to do. And then personal stuff, believe it or not, this is kind of important. If it's going to be a long day, make sure you got a snack. Bring some water, have some cash if you need to pay for parking or money, or get a snack or things. The older I get, make sure I always have aspirin and Tums around. Make sure your car's gassed up, and then your phone is at least 75% charge. Your phone is your get out of jail free if you have an emergency. So you don't want to be having a dead battery on your phone. So that's my checklist. It's just systematizing all these little details helps you be relaxed. And once you're relaxed, you can be present with your customer, your client, and you can take better photos and have a better experience for them, which is the most important thing. If they have a great experience, they're more likely to be customers for life. All right. Again, my suggestion, get there early, 15, 30 minutes. I tend to be a 30-minute early arriver, but gives you time to go to the bathroom if you need to. So it's a good thing. Dress appropriately. What is that? If you're shooting for, let's say you're taking pictures for Boeing, you might dress differently than you would if you were taking pictures for a coffee shop down the street. Just saying. Think about it a little bit. You don't have to be fancy pants if you're not. Like I'm not, but I'll wear my good jeans and some nicer shoes and a nice shirt versus a t-shirt. So there you go. And this is fake it till you make it. What I mean by that is project confidence. Help the client feel like you know what you're doing, even if you don't. It's okay. They don't know. Just be positive. Know that you can get it done. Just keep working at it. Project positive. It'll help you out a ton. So there you go on that. And then once we're on site, then we need to confirm the scope of work. So when you show up, one of the first questions to ask is you just confirm, hey, we're just doing so-and-so's headshot today. So they're like, no, we're doing so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. So make sure you know when you first get there, confirm this is what we're doing. This is what we agreed to do. So there's no surprises for you or the customer. Smile. It's a good thing. It never hurts. Just let them know you're grateful to be there, that you appreciate their trust in you to do this work that you're doing with them. Appear confident or be confident if you are actually confident. Show you're happy to be there, that you know what you're doing, that they'll be so glad they hired you. I suggest if you can, this is something I'm not real good at. If you've got a friend that can come along and it's okay with the client, that they can capture some behind the scenes BTS for your own marketing. So you doing the work, that kind of thing, or at least take a picture. If it's a neat scene, environment that you can include, or maybe the sign of the business, if it's a business customer. So don't forget about getting the next gig. So the current gig can help you do that. Proof of it, the experience, the how-to, that can help you get the next gig. And then before you go, sometimes the contact will, is the person you're working with, but sometimes they'll hire you and then they'll set you loose. So I always check in with the contact before I leave. Make sure, again, I dotted all the I's, crossed the T's. It's another chance to be face-to-face with someone because you are the brand, and it just, again, reinforces the relationship, which then reinforces the chance that you'll get another opportunity. And last but not least, before you leave, make sure you have everything you came with. So if you have a checklist of what you do beforehand, maybe have a checklist of all the gear you brought that day, and make sure it's all back in your bag because you don't want to leave stuff behind, both from a convenience standpoint and looking like you know what you're doing standpoint. So all these little details, the things I've learned in the 20 plus years I've been doing freelance work. So I know they seem like, oh my gosh, that's so anal, but it's better than looking like I don't know what I'm doing. All right, now we move on to post-production. We've got the photos, so what's the first thing we do? We back up everything. Back up. Have a copy. Actually, you should have 3 copies, sometimes even more. For me, I have a minimum of 3 copies. Sometimes there's 4 or 5. My camera will take photos to 2 memory cards, so the second card is a backup right in camera. Then as soon as I get home, I copy to an external hard drive, and then the next morning usually, or sometimes day of, if it's important stuff, I will do a backup to, so it's on that external hard drive. That's copy number one, and then it gets backed up to one hard drive, and that hard drive is also backed up to a second drive. So there's 3 copies, and then I also do online backup. So I'll do a separate video about backup strategy, but it's super important. I had last year a hard drive crash, actually 2. My backup also crashed, so 1 backup wasn't enough. It cost me a ton of money and embarrassment. So don't do that. All right, then we're going to import our photos to whatever software we're using, make our selections and do those edits, get some feedback on the edits from the client. Usually it's, yay, you did a great job. Thanks so much. Then you do any edits that they need. Sometimes they'll say, oh, hey, I think you remember this kind of photo. You didn't include it in the selects. Can we see what that looks like? Within reason, that's cool. Generally, I try and what they get is what they get. Don't show them a photo if you don't like it. If you don't like it, that's the one they're going to pick, and then you're going to be embarrassed to include it. So if you don't like it, don't show it to them. And then you get client approval, yay! And then you get to deliver the files or photos or prints or whatever, however you decided you would do that. And all right, after final delivery, there's still a little bit of work to do. So after final delivery, you get to invoice your client. So this is how you get paid. You get to say, here's my bill. We did the work. Here's the invoice. So let's hop over to the invoice. All right, so here we are with a sample invoice from me. So again, kind of like the contract and estimate, you include what it cost, who's the client, who's getting paid, what you did. Again, not super fancy here. I include an invoice number. That's just kind of random. I started at a number and then just add one. What date, the customer name, and then the contact person. Include your contact information here. I've left it off because this video is going to be on YouTube. Who the client was here. Actually, yes, Guido is a real magazine. They just contacted me and want to license a photo. Licensing a photo is where they ask my permission for a fee to use a photo in a certain way for a certain amount of time. I'm going to charge them $250 for that, and we'll see if I get paid. I will get paid. And then last but not least, down here include when you expect to receive payment, your contact information again down here, which I've removed except for my web address. So just super simple. This is done in Numbers, which is Apple's version of Excel. So it'll do the math for me, and it's nice and simple. So nothing super fancy. So, but this is how you get paid. I create a PDF of this, and this is what I send to them. So I don't even have to send a stamp, buy a stamp and send it in an envelope. So this helps me get paid more quickly when you send a PDF. All right, so invoice. Once you've got the invoice done, you're kind of almost done with the project, but there's still a few things to do. So with permission, and most of the time you have it, you can then now use the content that you just created, the art, the photos, as marketing for your next thing. So post these things to social media. Have a strategy for this. Think about hashtags. Think about the caption that you want to include, the details. Again, this is how you'll hopefully get some more work. So if you did a project that you don't want to do again, then don't post it to social media. But if you want to get more weddings, then post the wedding photo. Blog about it, write about it on your website. This is good to help you get, again, both search engine traffic potentially. Helps people know that you, let's say, do weddings, not product photography. So, or whatever, or products versus wedding. Add it to your portfolio if it's that good. Usually for me in my portfolio, what I do, if I add something, something comes out. You don't want a portfolio of 100 images. I do have categories of images, but you don't want in any category 100 images. I would recommend 20 maybe. So if I add photo number 21, something has to come out. So that's how I do it. That's my approach. It makes it curated and hopefully highest quality and or the kind of work I want the more of. That's part 2 of this video. Some business basic things on the production side. So you're actually doing the work, the process of going from introduction from the client, estimates, contracts, doing the work, all the little details of doing the job. Then you're done. Then you invoice. Boom. Yeah, it sounds easy. And it's not that hard. But there's lots of little details that if you forget them or don't do them correctly, they can bite you in the behind, either financially or professionally. Again, this was a quick overview. If you have questions, want more information, please feel free to let me know, and I will gladly help you as much as I can. I wish you the best. Go start your photography business. Give it a great name, which is your name. Until we meet again, bye for now.